StatsCan data released for the month of July saw an across-the-board drop in Canadians using employment insurance. Our next guest suggests that it might be due to the impact on seasonal workers. For more, we are now joined by Erin Weir, economist at United Steelworkers. Erin, great to have you in with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Why don't we first talk about what the changes have been in the employment insurance?
Well, sure. The number of people receiving employment insurance benefits has been cut quite dramatically to only about 500,000, and that compares to an unemployment figure of 1.4 million. So way fewer than half of unemployed Canadians actually get employment insurance benefits. That's the main trend that I've observed. The other point I noted is that the number of EI recipients has been cut back much more sharply in the Atlantic provinces than nationally.
Now, how does that dovetail, though, with the plan from a broader perspective here in Canada, really to try to incentivize people to continue to look for jobs?
Well, I don't think the focus is necessarily on incentivizing people to look for jobs. I think the problem right now is there aren't nearly enough jobs available. Statistics Canada, for example, reports that the ratio of unemployed workers to job vacancies is about 6 to 1. So the real thing is that we need to create jobs, not create incentives for people to find jobs.
Now, some of the changes, though, my understanding, were temporary, that were put in place after the crisis in 2008 to help people stay on unemployment insurance longer. Now, we have created some jobs in the last 4 years, so clearly that part should have rolled off naturally, don't you think? Or?
Well, I'm not totally convinced. You're right that the extension of employment insurance benefits in response to the financial crisis was explicitly temporary. On the other hand, we've still got unemployment up at 1.4 million. And by the way, that's the official number, which excludes a lot of people who've given up looking for work and therefore aren't counted as being unemployed. It also excludes a lot of people who have part-time jobs who would like to have a full-time job. So I would say in the context of a bad labor market, we actually should have kept some of those enhancements to EI benefits. But of course, the other change we haven't really gotten into yet is the one the federal government made earlier this year, which was to really restrict EI benefits in such a way that people who've accessed the program in the past have a much harder time getting benefits today, and that really targets seasonal workers.
Well, it does, but the other, well, to a degree, maybe it does, or that's the resulting impact, but at the same time, too, they are trying to limit the amount of people that continue to reoccur using the unemployment benefits, correct?
Well, look, I mean, if the goal is to reduce the number of people receiving benefits, I guess they've achieved it because they've cut back the number of beneficiaries from something like 700,000 to 500,000 just in the past few years. The problem is those people aren't getting jobs because unemployment is still high.
But do you think, though, that there isn't a place for it in the sense that they do want to discourage people from doing seasonal work and not really continuing to look for work when it's not in season for them?
Well, sure. In an ideal world, we'd have enough full-year, full-time work available for everyone who wants it. And in that context, there'd be no reason to subsidize seasonal work. But in the real world, where there is a lot of unemployment and there aren't enough jobs available, I think we actually should be encouraging people to take seasonal opportunities if that's all that's available to them. And it's not unreasonable to support them at other times of the year when there simply isn't paid employment available.
I guess two questions. One is, when these changes were initially put in at the beginning of the year, they were clearly going to be negative for seasonal workers, and
sure,
that there was an objective here to make it harder to reapply. The degree to which that has played out, was that surprising to you? Is it more than you expected, less than you expected?
Well, I guess it's just always interesting to see the data bear out, what we feared would happen. And I suppose, yeah, given the nature of the changes, it's not surprising that you've had this big reduction in EI benefits in Atlantic Canada. But now we've actually seen it. It's actually happened. And if it was in a context of a big reduction in unemployment, that would be a good thing. If people were just getting jobs and going back to work, that's what we want. The problem is people are still unemployed. They're just not getting EI now, and that implies a big burden on their communities in terms of reduced consumer spending and potentially a burden on provincial governments who may have to pay out more in welfare.
But to the degree that some of those now are incentivized to go and find other work, that would typically happen lagging. In other words, first they would reapply for an insurance and find out they couldn't get it, then they go looking for a job. So it's possible, though, that we may still see some improvement in employment as those people get back into the workforce aggressively and start to look for work.
Well, I hope you're right. I guess the reason I'm a little skeptical is that the job vacancy statistics indicate that there's only about one opening for every 6 unemployed workers. So, I mean, even if we manage to fill every single vacancy out there, which is unlikely given that there's always some friction in a modern economy, there's always some unfilled positions, we'd still have a huge unemployment problem. The real solution to that, I think, is to actually create more jobs. And one of the ways you create jobs is through consumer demand. And from that perspective, EI benefits are actually a good thing.
Erin, let me ask you this. What would you like to see happen with the system?
Sure. Well, I'd actually like to see the accessibility, the duration, and the level of benefits improved. I think people should be able to qualify for some level of benefits based on 360 insurable hours. Right now, the entrance requirement varies a lot from one region to another. So if you have the misfortune of losing your job in somewhere where the overall unemployment rate is low, it's very hard to qualify for benefits. The level of benefits is only 55% of your previous employment income, so pretty hard for a lot of people to live a dignified life on that kind of money. I'd like to see it go up at least to 60%. And the duration of benefits. One of the improvements that was made temporarily during the financial crisis was an extra 5 weeks of benefits. I think Canadian workers still need that given how weak our job market is.
Do you think the Canadian economy can afford that?
Well, I do, and an interesting point on the affordability of it is that our finance minister, Jim Flaherty, just recently announced this freeze on employment insurance premiums. And his argument was that the EI fund was in such good shape, they didn't need the revenues, they could afford to freeze premiums. Well, I would say if they can afford to do that, surely they can afford to provide adequate benefits to Canadians who've been unemployed through no fault of their own.
Not if you necessarily want to make sure that the money is there in the future.
Well, but freezing premiums doesn't make sure that the money's there in the future either. And I think this idea, though, of saving for the future in the EI fund is a really good point because, of course, the history of all this is that the federal government sucked about $57 billion out of employment insurance before the recession, and that's part of the reason the program was so fragile going into the economic crisis.
All right, Erin, we will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Voilà, Karine. Alors, d'un économiste qui représente le syndicat des métallos, l'entreprise privée, environ 10 000 membres dans les provinces atlantiques. Et cet économiste fait la corrélation entre le taux de chômage qui est élevé dans la région et la diminution importante des prestations d'assurance-emploi dans la région. On écoute. La réforme de l'assurance-emploi est un échec en Atlantique, selon le syndicat des métallos, le plus important syndicat du secteur privé au Canada. La réforme du gouvernement Harper, adoptée il y a plus d'1 an, visait à coupler les emplois disponibles avec les chômeurs et ainsi diminuer le nombre de prestataires de l'assurance-emploi. Ça ne semble pas avoir fonctionné.
Le nombre de personnes touchant des prestations était coupé beaucoup plus aux provinces atlantiques.
Alors qu'il y a 6% de moins de prestataires au Canada qu'en juillet de l'année passée, dans les provinces atlantiques, la baisse est beaucoup plus marquée. 16% à l'île du Prince-Édouard, presque 3 fois moins qu'à l'échelle nationale, 12% de moins de prestataires en Nouvelle-Écosse, 11% de moins à Terre-Neuve-et-Labrador et 9% de moins de prestataires de l'assurance-emploi au Nouveau-Brunswick. Moins de prestataires donc, mais pas moins de chômeurs. Le taux de chômage au Nouveau-Brunswick, par exemple, est demeuré inchangé, autour de 11%, un des pires taux au Canada.
Alors, ça me dit que beaucoup des chômeurs ne reçoivent pas des prestations maintenant.
Cette réforme-là ne correspond vraiment pas aux réalités des régions atlantiques. Elle ne tient pas compte de nos réalités.
Selon ce militant contre la réforme de l'assurance-emploi, les statistiques prouvent que les travailleurs, saisonniers en l'occurrence, ont de plus en plus de difficultés à obtenir des prestations.
Le processus d'appel est rendu très complexe et que ça fait plusieurs semaines qu'ils sont dans le processus d'appel puis ils ont des difficultés avec ça.
Sans emploi, sans prestation d'assurance-emploi, bénéficiant seulement du bien-être social, la réforme aura un impact négatif sur les travailleurs.
Un grand impact sur la communauté, surtout qu'il y a plusieurs prestataires qui risquent de se voir perdre leurs prestations. Ça peut même peut-être pousser du monde à s'en aller travailler ailleurs.
Un panel d'experts chargé d'étudier les impacts de la réforme de l'assurance-emploi en Atlantique devrait tenir des consultations dans les prochaines semaines et remettre son rapport en novembre. De son côté, le député conservateur Robert Gauguin de la région de Moncton n'a pas retourné nos appels. Nicolas Stenbach, Radio-Canada, Moncton.